Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel, That's the Tea. If you haven't already guessed, my name is Miss T and today I'm going to be showing you how to make this flower wall. So this flower wall was actually inspired by Nella Rose's, which I saw on her house tour YouTube video, and I thought I've got to have my name in shining lights. So I completely made this wall myself by hand and I'm actually going to take you through step by step how I made it. So I hope you enjoyed this video and don't forget to like and do not forget to subscribe to my channel. These are all the things that I used to make my flower wall, and as you can see, I've obviously got my flowers and I went with pink and white. I've got my name in a neon light. I've got a foam board. I've also got a nail, some fishing string, and my best friend E6000 glue, and this large photo frame, and everything will be linked in the description box. So I chose these really pretty pink and white flowers, and I think I used about 200, but I'll link the exact number below. And I started off by separating the stem from the flowers. It does take quite a bit of strength, as you can see, to pull apart the stem, and at one point I did use my teeth, but you can save the flower leaves for extra to core if you like, so don't throw them out. First things first, I take my E6000 glue and the nail, and I use the nail to create a hole in the foam board, and this will guide me as to where I'm going to put the flowers and make it easier for me to attach the flowers to the board. So I unscrew the lid, and here's an actual life hack. You can flip the lid upside down, poke it into the hole, and it perfectly opens up the glue without using any tools or even your teeth. So this works for all tubes. So I put the glue into the hole and I stick the flower into the hole and use the remaining flower stem to wedge into the holes of the board. And always remember to keep the lid on the glue to stop it from drying up. I then took a blow dryer just to help the glue dry a little bit, as the flowers wouldn't stay upright, so the hair dryer just helps them to stay firm in place by drying up the glue. I continue to use my nail, and you can use a nail, a screwdriver, a pen, anything sharp to make holes in the foam board to guide me as to where I'm going to place the flowers. It's best to start off in the corner and then make your way outwards. Try to keep the flowers as close to each other as possible so that you avoid having gaps and seeing the foam board behind. As you can see, some of the flowers had stems and some of them didn't. So it's best to try and keep the stems in, as they help to poke through the foam board and keep them sturdy in place. But it's okay if some of them don't have stems. I just used the ones without stems to fill in the gaps, and it made it much easier to fill in those blank gaps later on. And here I go again with the blow dryer. Here I take my screw again and I use it to guide me as to where I'm going to put the next flowers. You can wing it, but I find it really helpful to have an idea of where I'm going to place the next flower. So I had two colours for flower options, and I would place each flower in the designated area and decide which colour would fit better, white or pink. And in this case, I went for white because I thought it would look better. And that's what I did for the whole entire process. I just kept repeating this and adding pink or white. The best thing about E6000 glue is that it doesn't dry instantly, so I had enough time to swap out white for pink or pink for white if I thought I had too many of the same colour in one area. Sometimes I didn't put enough glue on the board, so I just add a little bit of glue onto the flower just to give it that extra stick. There's a bit of a gap, as you can see, and this is where it helps to have flowers with no stems to squeeze them into those gaps. These areas are hard to reach, so grab a screwdriver and basically stab some holes for the flowers to fill. You want to try avoid piercing the board all the way and just make a dent in the board. Now I'm going to take my name that I got from Neon Filter, and I'll link it down in the description box, and I'm going to trace around the sides just to get an idea of where it's going to sit and where I can afford to have less concentration of flowers. Sometimes the stem will be a bit too long and I don't want it to go through to the other side of the wall, so you can just pull off the stem, and in this instant it wouldn't come off, so I had to be ghetto and use my teeth to pull it off. The key is to spread out the flowers just to make the wall look more full and to give it that much more definition. At this point I was able to make about 5-6 holes in the board, fill them with glue, let them sit and dry for a bit, and then add the flowers in, so I didn't have to do it one at a time because I'd gotten the hang of it. You don't have to use a hairdryer every time, it just speeds up the process of drying, but you're gonna need to let this sit overnight. My advice to you is to find quite large rose flowers for your board and to always buy extra, because you want extra to be able to fill in any gaps to make it look really full. This is what the board looks like so far, and unfortunately I bought the flowers from AliExpress and I had to wait 3 weeks to get a second batch because I ran out, and then I had to wait another 3 weeks because I ran out again, but eventually after 6 weeks I got to finish my flower board. So don't order from AliExpress if you want this done quickly. Voila, look at that flower wall. It's so full you can't even see the board behind, and I think it came out great, so job well done. So I've grabbed the sign and I'm going to place it on the board just to check where I want it to be positioned. And the sign actually comes with holes, so I'm going to use these holes here to guide where I'm going to attach the sign to the board. So I've gone ahead and put X's as to where I'm going to align the holes and the sign to the board, and I used a bright blue pen, but I would actually recommend maybe using a light grey colour so that when you hang up the board it's not so obvious. I'm going to take a knife, and where the X's are I'm going to punch through 2 parallel slits. You want 2 slits for each hole in your sign, so in total I had 8 slits for the 4 holes in my neon name sign. So remember, when you're buying your name sign, to request for drill holes. The holes need to be slits big enough to fit the cable ties, and I was originally going to use fishing string, but I wasn't convinced that the fishing string was going to be able to support the weight of the sign, so instead I went with cable ties. If you like, you can also choose to stick flowers around the edges of your board. I wouldn't have been able to fit my flower board onto the actual frame, but just to give it that 3D look, you can put flowers all around the edges of the board, and this is where it helps to have stems on the flower to help poke into the edge. You can see the slit holes that I've created for the cable ties to go in one end and to come out the other. I would recommend using clear cable ties just so that you can't see it once the flower wall is finished. The other thing about cable ties is that if you want to separate your neon sign from your flower wall, you can easily cut the cable ties and you can keep your flower wall intact. So you want to start from behind so that you don't see the cable tie knot on the flower board. So you put it through and pull the cable tie through on the other side. Then you want to take your sign and loop the cable tie through the holes made in your sign, and make sure that the cable ties are the right way round. You want it coming up and out through into the sign, and then loop it around the sign and back into the back of the board where you started, which is the hardest part. And I know this because I don't think I explained it that well, so just watch me do it. Sometimes if you're getting a bit of resistance, you can just grab the knife and make the slit a little bit bigger. So you don't want to make it too big because you don't want the cable tie actually ripping through the board, but you want it just big enough so that it goes through easily. Again, I will emphasize getting really long cable ties because mine were just about long enough to go through the board and the sign and then back through the board again. I can't lie, I had to be a little bit ghetto and use my mouth because my fingers couldn't grip onto the cable tie tight enough when threading it through. And now you can see a lipstick stain on the back of my board. Obviously you can see it's still very loose because I've still got 3 more cable ties to put through, but once I have them situated, I'm attaching the board to the sign and I'll be able to pull them tighter. With the cable ties, once you've put the end through the lock, you want to get about 2 or 3 clicks in just to secure the sign to the board. You can pull the ties tighter at the end, and I would really recommend actually threading through the cable ties first, then flipping over the flower wall, and then pulling all the cable ties at the same time, as opposed to doing it one at a time, because that way you have more control of where the sign sits on the board. Sorry my arm is in the way, but It's getting a little bit harder to get the third and the fourth cable tie through because I'd already pulled down the other two so tight. So the sign is getting a little bit harder to lift and work around. And at any point, if you feel like the cable tie won't go through, it's fine to just get the knife and make the slit a little bit bigger. And if the back of your board looks like mine and you have all those bumps from all the nail digs, it's fine because no one's even going to see that once you attach the flower board to the actual frame. The more your cable ties click, the better, but you want to make sure that it's not too tight because I almost ended up ripping through the foam board because I pulled on the cable ties a bit too tight. And remember, the sign is hanging, so over time the weight of the sign might actually rip the board, so you want to make sure it's not too tight but secure enough that it is straight or in the position that you want the sign to be. You want to check if either side of your sign is where you want it to be, and if you want it to be a little bit higher, you want to pull the top cable ties first, and if you want it to be a little bit lower, you pull on the bottom of the cable ties first and then adjust the rest accordingly. As you can see, I'm pulling on the cable tie just to lift the mist part a little bit higher, so it required me to pull on the top cable tie first and then adjust the bottom one accordingly. And this again emphasizes why it's better to actually put through all the cable ties and then pull them afterwards. You want to grab your board and put your flower wall on top and make sure that it fits. And as we can all see, the brown edge part of the frame is showing, and I don't want that showing on my flower wall when I hang it up. So all I'm going to do is grab some plain paper and use it to fill in the gaps. Remove the backboard of the frame so you're just dealing with the plastic or the glass, and you want to grab the pieces of paper and just sit them where you want to stick them. This is to make sure you can't see the brown of the backboard once you attach the flower wall to the frame. All I did was grab a Pritt stick and get about 2-3 sheets of paper to cover up the sides of the frame. And if you look closely on my flower wall, you'll be able to see where the first sheet of paper meets the second sheet of paper. But honestly, it's hardly noticeable. And my best advice would to just get a large piece of paper, maybe A1, A2, just so that you just use one piece of paper as opposed to using 2 or 3. Perfection isn't always guaranteed, and as you can see, I've got 2 scrap pieces of paper which actually ran away and ended up being behind my frame, and it's only when I flipped it over that I noticed. But it didn't really matter because I was going to be putting my flower wall on top and no one would even notice. One thing I forgot to do was to remove the plastic from the board frame, and I actually thought it was glass, but turns out it was plastic, and it had a thin plastic sheet on top, and I forgot to take that off, but it's okay because I still managed to attach the flower board to the photo frame. Next, you want to grab some glue. I did use an industrial glue that I found in my dad's toolbox. I've seen him use it to fix my wardrobe, so I figured it wouldn't hurt to try it. I actually started off squeezing the glue onto the frame, and I just used my hands to spread it all over. My hands were very crumbly afterwards, but it got the job done, so that's what really matters. I wouldn't entirely recommend using your hands, maybe a paintbrush, because I'm not even sure if I'm supposed to be in contact with the glue, but hey how. I then went in with my E6000 glue and I just spreaded it everywhere. Spread it? Well, I just put it everywhere. I'm pretty sure I used plaster instead of glue earlier, so that would explain the white stuff. But just grab your flower wall, stick it on top and begin to press down. And it's okay to use a little bit of force because you really want to make sure the board is attached to the flower wall. Well, the flower wall is attached to the board more like. And you really want to make sure it's stuck on. My flower wall is above my head where I sleep, so the last thing I need is a flower wall falling on my head. Now, for hanging the board, my best advice when hanging anything really is to make sure you put the nails in the right place in the wall. So to do that, all I did was grab some masking tape. It's actually bandage tape, but it works just the same. And you cover the hooks of the board. Then you grab a pen and just trace around the hooks. Then you get an idea of the exact distance of where the nails need to go. You just take that plaster or take that masking tape, whatever it is, and put it on your wall and just draw on where the nails are supposed to go, or the holes. And yeah, I got a bit of assistance from Papa Bear, and he actually drilled in the wall for me, as you can see. My wall has a bit of texture, so it was a great position to hang my flower wall, so it just covers up that part of the wall. And voila, here it is. Here is the end result of my flower wall, and I love the way it looks like when it's lit. And yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, and please share with me what your flower wall looks like if you decide to do it for yourself.